Alright, so we've got a nice paint bucket green, and that was kind of nice to use the paint bucket. Saves us some time instead of trying to bit by bit color it in. It's just as long as we can get that selection pretty accurate, boom, you can fill in a lot of color with a single click. We're now going to introduce some other tools, in particular the pencil tool. So let's start with that one. Let's go back to your body layer, make sure that's selected, and then we're going to create a new one. So one little trick about Photoshop is anytime you're creating a new layer, it's going to put the new layer above the layer you have selected. So that can save you some time. You can imagine with some art, these can get to be 20, 30 layers of artwork, and if you don't have the right layer in the right place and create a new one, you're just going to have to move it later, and it gets a little bit of a bother. So to save yourself some time, select the layer that you want the layer to be above. So here we're going to put one and add it above body. So we're going to color above the body layer. And there's the new layer. Let's go ahead and rename this color. And now we're going to come over to our tools and select the pencil tool. Now as soon as I select the pencil tool, you'll notice up at the top you get certain properties that show up. So generally all tools have their own little set of properties that you can adjust. And it makes it pretty handy because that way it's not just one setting. For instance, right now this is set to 30 pixels. Now notice how big that is. That's probably a little too big, especially if I want to come in here and color in this tooth. That 30 pixels is too big. I can't do it. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to click on this tiny little arrow next to it, and then I'm going to change the slider to about 4 pixels. It's kind of small, and there's other things that you can play around with. You'll see that there are different brush and pencil types. We're not going to get into that in this class. You can save that for Photoshop 1 and 2, but these can become pretty cool. Not only that, but you can import brushes that other people have made, and there's some really cool stuff out there. Right here you get some common sizes that are used, but we want to make sure hardness is set to 100%, and we're going to use a 4 pixel size, and we'll just go ahead and keep the shape of the pencil an even circle, and then you can click out of it. Now the next thing I have to do is change the color. So let's go back to my color wheel, and let's make everything white. Actually that's all yellow, and there's white. This dragon has really clean teeth. And we can come up here and notice that I can color white, and even as I go over the black, it doesn't change the black. Why not? That's because our line art, which is solid black, is over the color. So even though it's at multiply, it's going to blend the color, but if it's black, nothing really can blend with black. I could maybe make it a little bit more black, darker black, but I'm not going to be able to put white over it. So this allows me to come in here and color things. So we've got eyeballs, and we can do all of the talons. And if your tool is too small or too big, go back and change it if you have to. This gets highlighted, so if it's getting hard to slide the wheel, you can type in the size you want. Now because we're at 72 resolution, it's very, very pixelated when we zoom in on this, but that's alright. When we zoom out, you won't be able to tell the difference. So we have some white talons. So take some time to do this. I'm going to do a little bit more coloring while I can do a little bit more. Oh, I found a little error on our a small little mistake on the paint bucket. Alright, so I've colored in some things, and maybe I want to do some other funky colors on the nose. So I've got like a pink right here, and maybe I bring in a yellow. And is there any magic color for these things? No. Just enjoy what you got. Now you could probably fast forward my video at this point, but I'm going to keep going here since I don't have that much farther to go. And I maybe have one more red. And I think you're getting the idea of how that works. Now let's say I made a mistake. Let's say I went, or better yet, let's say I'm coloring and I go over my line. Now certainly if I go over the blue line, I can just change it back to blue. There's a eyedropper tool, it looks like it's the 5th one down, and I can select the color that I was coloring before and go back to my pencil tool and just color over it. Now that's given that it's all on the same layer, okay? But in this case, I went over the lines. There isn't a color to color over it. I have to erase it. So there is an eraser tool. And it's this one right here. And when you have, you're basically going to just use the regular eraser tool, but you've got 3 different erasers. There's one called block. If you come up to the properties, there's block, pencil, and brush. Brush is going to have a fuzzy edge, more like an airbrush. Pencil is going to be more of a crisp edge, like we've been coloring. And block is a square. No matter what size, where you're zoomed in, you always get a big square. Alright, so you could use the block here. Notice I could take the block and erase just like that. Likewise, I could have had this on pencil and I get a rounder and I erase the color. Now if I go too far, I can either undo and do it over, or if I go too far, once again, come back to the pencil. Another shortcut with the pencil is if you hit Option, then the eyedropper tool pops up, and then I can color. Now some of you might use a stylus for this. If you come to class, we'll show you how to do all this coloring with a stylus. And with the stylus, you actually just turn it around and the other end is an eraser. But even then, you might have to change the size of the eraser. Notice with the eraser, when I have it in pencil mode, I also can change how big the pixels are. So it works just like a pencil tool, but you're erasing with a pencil. Alright, so I'm going to zoom out. Now because I have good habit, I'm going to go ahead and hit save. File save. The next thing we're going to do is a little bit of airbrushing. And actually I'll do another video for that. So the next video is going to be airbrushing. That was the pencil tool and the eraser tool. Oh, before I erase, down here in the body, if you noticed and zoomed in real close, there was this little gap right here in the armpit, and this was on the body layer. So I just took that out to clean it up. And notice how there's just a tiny little edge on the outside. You could erase that too. It just depends how clean you really want to be with everything. As you can see, this digital art stuff can become quite meticulous as you try to clean things up and make things very, very, very tight. It just depends on your style. Nothing's right, nothing's absolutely wrong. Alright, so go ahead and save that, and we'll come back in the next video and show you the airbrush.